Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Freeing Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Dukeman, and today I have with me Mr. Darren Nichols. So, Darren, thanks for coming on. Happy to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. How you been?
Fantastic, man. Doing amazing.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. So let's get started and just tell us background. Tell us about yourself, and let's kind of get to know you.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, thank you so much for this opportunity, Dan. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to chat with you and talk my story a little bit and see how we can maybe help some folks out there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So a little bit about me. I'm 36 years old. I'm a single father. I've got a beautiful 11-year-old girl who's my everything. I'm a full-time police officer. I've been doing that for about 8 years. I've been in law enforcement for about 8 years. Working on some other things that I'm really, really excited about. I'm sure we'll get to talking about that in a little
Absolutely.
bit. But I enjoy traveling, doing fun things with my daughter, spending time with her, and helping her just progress in life, man.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. Being a dad is probably the biggest job we have in the end. It's definitely the hardest and most rewarding for sure.
Absolutely. Without question.
So, being in law enforcement and spending some time in corrections, like most people on the show, you've experienced some things, traumatic events. Let's dive right into that and talk about things in your life that have caused the trauma, PTSD, and how you've grown to overcome them in your journey to do so.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, trauma for me started at a young age. As the more that I get older, I start to hear more people's stories, and so many of us have trauma and bullshit from a very young age, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like the more and more people I meet, nobody's free of shit. Everybody's got something, right? And so that helps, so we can easily relate to people. But for me, I actually I lost both of my parents to cancer at a very young age. So my father died when I was 3 years old, almost 4, to brain cancer. And then a short while later, I lost my mom. My mom passed away from breast cancer when I was 9.
Wow.
So losing both of my parents at a young age before 10 was fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Fucking sucked. And I've got 3 siblings. And so obviously that was very difficult for all of us, for our entire family, and the trauma that comes with that. But then, we eventually, we ended up living with my aunt and uncle after my parents passed away, and I remained with them for the rest of my childhood. And as if that trauma of losing my parents wasn't enough, my uncle who essentially raised us, which I don't really want to call him raising us. He provided all the essentials. He had the money to provide a roof over our head and food, but he was emotionally and verbally abusive, to all of us. All 3 of my siblings, including his own kids, have trauma from his shit. Him and I butted heads for the longest time while I was there, and it's created a lot of for a lot of my adult life that trauma has remained. So all of that stuff as a child, accompanied with being fucking bullied in junior high and high school, throughout, so there's all that stuff together that I was up against.
So now, where were you in the ranks with your siblings? Oldest, youngest, middle?
So I have 2 older sisters and then a younger brother.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you're kind of stacked in the middle then.
Kind of in the middle, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For sure.
So then, and you stayed with your aunt and uncle until you were 18?
Yeah, until I was 18, and then I ended up, at the time, like we were a religious family. And then when I turned 19, I went on a Mormon mission. I went on a mission to Brazil, did that for 2 years. And then when I came home, I was like, I don't want to be here anymore with you folks. Like this, I just can't do this anymore. And so then and we were in Washington State. And then from that time on, I moved to, shortly after I moved to Utah.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. Nice. So I'm sure the move itself was a big part of releasing you from at least some of that trauma. Different place. You're not facing those same scenes and places that the memories are.
Right. And you know what, to a point, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, moving away and thinking that, okay, it's over now. Like I don't have to deal with those fuckers anymore.
Yeah.
But in all reality, that's not the case. Right. So like it just physically moving away from them doesn't get rid of the trauma. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to heal from that.
Yep.
I've had to spend a lot of years healing from the shit that my uncle put me through. I gave him too much fucking power.
Yeah. And in your defense though, you're a kid. It's hard to know those things and to know really that you have any power as a kid. And
Right.
I'm sure there was a certain amount of you feeling trapped in that situation, or that there was no avoidable circumstance that was reasonable. I mean, there's always like that. I think probably at every kid at some point in their childhood thinks, I'm going to run away.
Right.
And, there's certainly some that probably do, but most end up not, because there's a big scary world out there for a kid to face.
True.
But so what did some of that healing look like to you?
Well, like I said, just physically moving away wasn't enough, and there's so much stuff, because you think back to all the emotional abuse, verbal abuse of being told that, I mean, literally he told me that I was not going to amount to shit. And that because as a kid, I had anger issues because of losing my fucking parents. Like who wouldn't, right? Like Absolutely. I had anger issues from that. And because of those anger issues, he told me all the time that I was going to be an abusive father.
Oh,
like
geez.
Told me I was going to have anger issues with my kids and I was going to be a shit father. And you know what? For so long, I believed that stuff. And so over time, honestly, I think one thing that I know that helped me a lot is once I got into my career in law enforcement, I achieved something big for myself. When I was a kid, it was a dream of mine to become a police officer, right? But he told me I'd never amount to anything, right? So it wasn't up until I was 25 years old that I, started pursuing my career in law enforcement. And once I achieved that, I got into law enforcement. I boosted my confidence. I was doing something I was proud of. I was able to, support my daughter and all these things, right? When she was born, I was able to, support her and all those things. I eventually realized that, holy shit, he was fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I did amount to something. I achieved what I wanted to achieve. And I'm not a piece of shit father like he told me I was going to be, and that was simply by that came to me after, achieving something that I worked for that I wanted to pursue.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's funny how it takes those monumental things sometimes for something to click. Mm-hmm. When there was certainly those good aspects and things in you before that, you just weren't in a spot mentally to see those things. And so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because some people never see it. So that's amazing.
Well, and it takes a lot of time, Dan. Like, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like I came home from I went on my Mormon mission when I was, 21 years old. Right. And I still was dealing with that stuff. Right. It wasn't until, after pursuing my dream of law enforcement and doing it for a couple of years that I realized that not only does he not have the power over me, but I achieved everything he told me I wasn't going to fucking achieve. Right. So it was a big middle finger to him. But in all reality, I also had to realize too, that it wasn't anymore about proving to him that I was going to be something. That's giving him too much power. And I realized that. I took my power back and realized that I don't give a shit what he thinks about me. I don't care. You know, I have all this trauma related to him. And if I keep giving him that power, then that trauma keeps coming back up. And then it just causes more and more problems in my own life. And why? He's far away from me. Like, I shouldn't be concerned with that anymore. Like, I did everything he said I wasn't going to do, you know, and I know I'm a damn good father. So it doesn't matter what he thinks anymore. And in all reality, his opinion of me, once I became a cop, completely changed.
Imagine that, right?
He doesn't disrespect me anymore. Every time I see him, anytime I see him, it doesn't fucking matter anymore. He doesn't treat me the same way anymore because I don't let him have that power. Absolutely. And he actually respects cops. And it's funny because he tries to joke and give me shit, and I just throw it right back. He has no power over me anymore, and it's liberating, bro.
Yeah, and I think so much of that is realizing your own power.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle for a lot of people too, to step into your own power, because it is or can be a scary, uncomfortable spot for a lot of folks. But once you step into that power, it becomes a place of, I shouldn't say comfort, but you recognize it, and you let it help you foster your thoughts and your processes and how you grow and act.
Absolutely.
You're not operating out of fear anymore or resentment.
Nope.
That's great.
And I'm not a special case. That's the other thing that people need to realize. Like, I'm just a human, right? Yep. Like, the things that I overcame and to get to where I'm at now, like I didn't do anything. I don't have all these special skills or anything. Like, anybody can overcome these things, right? Like, I didn't do great in school. That didn't make a difference. Like, it doesn't, like, I'm not an anomaly. Like, anybody can overcome this shit and take their power back.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, that's great stuff. I mean, you've overcome the childhood aspect of your trauma, and with your uncle, were you able to cope and work through your parents dying at an early age?
So, you know, I went through a lot of therapy as a kid, anger management stuff. You know, I talked about that. I went through a lot of different therapists. You know, my aunt and uncle would take me to therapists that were, you know, ran by the church or different things here and there. And, you know, I don't at the time, I don't know that it helped. I really don't know. I held in a lot of anger, you know, and then, I will say that, you know, one thing for me, that helped a lot was having, a relationship with God, you know, and I owe that to being a part of the church and being able to, you know, be introduced to that kind of stuff. And having a relationship with God helped, but there were times where I was pissed off at God.
And it happens to everybody. I've been in that place myself, where you find yourself questioning really why you're being, what you perceive maybe as punishment or some unjust trial that you're being forced to go through. So I completely that resonates with me. I understand.
I mean, growing up, dude, for the longest time, I had so much resentment, not only towards God, but to other people that had their fucking parents, you know, other people that had their parents. I'm like, fuck you. Why do you get to have them? And I don't. This doesn't make any sense. What did I do to deserve this? Right. Always playing that victim mentality of like, what did I do to deserve this? You know what I mean? Now, hindsight, right? I look back and I'm like, fuck, all the lessons that I've learned, all the things that I've overcome, you know, and the strength that I have now because of that shit. Obviously, as a kid, you don't recognize that. You know, it's taken years, dude. And honestly, I still have my days. Like, it's been years, right, since losing both my parents, but I have days where dude. And I'm not ashamed to say this. I will sit down on my fucking bed and I will fucking cry about the fact that I didn't get to know my dad. I didn't
Sure.
get to experience what it's like to have a dad, right? Because I was 3, you know. Same thing with my mom. You know, I have experiences where I feel that they're close to me, things like that. And I have other experiences where I'm just fucking pissed off. I'm like, man, like I'd give anything to have my parents right here to see my daughter, you know, and spend time with her and see the little lady she's becoming, you know.
Absolutely.
So like I said, I've been through therapy. To answer your question, sorry, I kind of went off
No,
a little bit.
you're good. This is what we do.
Yeah. So I, went through a lot of therapy. Having a relationship with God has helped, though it's been rocky. And then I don't know, man. It's hard to say that because I don't think that it's a thing where you're like, well, I'm completely over the death of my parents. I don't think I ever will be, you know. But I have learned through personal development and all these different things, having good people around me that I can still have a good life and I can still, do all the things even though they're not around. And again, some days are easier than others. I tell people all the time, I fucking hate Mother's Day.
I'm sure.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I like Father's Day because I'm a father, but other than that, I'd hate it.
Yeah.
Right. So it depends on the day, right? Some days I'm a mess from it. And I'm like, I feel like I haven't properly dealt with it, but I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let the emotions happen.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. If you're letting the emotions happen, you're not burying them. You're not repressing them. You're very much allowing, that's part of the healing, right? And while you may be very well correct that you may never completely get over it or heal from it, but you recognize that the emotions are there, you accept them, you give yourself space for those emotions and for those feelings. And that's very healthy. For me, I've always struggled with that. I don't really now, but I used to very much struggle with allowing myself to feel emotions. I very much just stuffed them back down and repressed them because, a lot of times when they came up, it was not the time. And then by the time you're in that space where it is the time, you've stuffed it down, it's buried.
Well, yeah. And I think too, for like the line of work that we're in and different things like that, we've been conditioned to believe that that's what you do is you suppress it. You don't talk about it. Plus growing up too, like for me, I got conditioned because my aunt and uncle, we didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about this shit. Confrontation was, if there was confrontation, we avoided it. Right. That's how it was in the house when I grew up. And so it's like, we didn't talk about the feelings, the emotions, things like that. So as I grew up, sometimes shit would come to a head and I'd fucking lose my shit and they'd wonder why. I'm like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, we're not, as a society, we don't do a great job teaching anyone, including our kids, how to deal with emotion. And that's something that I'm certainly working on as a father. And I think I'm doing some cool things with my kids that are helping them to express their emotions and work through things. But I mean, in the end, like, I think truthfully, your aunt and uncle probably did the best they could, given the tools that they had
100%
and their experiences. And I know my parents, certainly they did the best they could and no fault of their own. I love my parents. But that's, it's all a learned thing. They learned from their parents who learned from their parents. So we get to choose to make that shift.
100%, dude. I was going to say the same thing that, it's up to us to break the mold. Right. And I, again, like you said, we could be better. Right. And I think about with my daughter too, like I do the very best that I can to, talk to her about the things that she's going through at school and different things and to express her feelings and her emotions and to have her feel like she can actually come to me about anything,
Absolutely.
know, but if our kids feel like if they come to us about things, they're either going to get in trouble or we're so busy on our phones, doing whatever, then eventually they're going to just stop coming to us about the important shit.
Yep. And they'll get their decision from somewhere else. they'll
And
get,
we don't want that.
and you don't want that. So yeah,
Fuck
and
no. Especially in today's day and age.
Yep.
In our school systems,
Yep, not a fan.
nope.
And I've been really big with my kids just about, I talk about the hard things that I don't want to talk about. And it's honestly, it's easier for me to have this conversation with you or even a complete stranger about really hard stuff that I'm dealing with versus my kids, because there's still that stigma of like, you got to be a parent, you got to be strong, you know, you're the father figure, you're tough, all this. But in the end, I think my children respect me more because I'm willing to talk to them about those hard things and be emotionally vulnerable with them. And I've told them that I am that way, and I'm radically transparent with them because I want them to do the same with me, and I want them to be comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that there's so much to that, you know, any situation that my kids are in, I would much rather have them come to me for advice or to just say, hey, like I screwed up, versus me finding out later or finding out that they made the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Because I think as a parent, you know, yeah, obviously you're a father, and there's some people that are like, well, you're the enforcer, you're this, you're that. In the end, you're a mentor. Like your calling as a parent is to raise these children the best you can and give them the best outcome. And I've always looked at parenting as, I know how good my parents did, I want to do twice as good. And it's nothing that they did bad. It's just they gave me a certain set of tools. I want to build on those tools, and I want to do better than they did. And I hope someday my kids, when they have their own children, that they blow my parenting skills out of the water with theirs.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the goal. I wouldn't take offense to it by any means. I'd be like, yeah, you guys are kicking ass. Keep going.
Right. Well, and for me too, it's, you know, it's interesting that you talk about, you know, with our kid, with transparent, as far as transparency goes, dude, like that's something that I've been working on for a while with my daughter, just trying to be more transparent, open, and honest. I don't sugarcoat shit around her, you know, and I don't shelter her because I was sheltered as a kid. A lot of the bullying that happened to me as a kid through junior high and high school is because I didn't know what the fuck was going on in the real world because I was so sheltered, you know, and I'm trying not to, you know, do that with my daughter. But another point that I wanted to make is, you know, when people are like, well, you're the dad, you're supposed to be disciplinary. Yeah. Why can't we be all the things? Right. Yeah. Why can't I be the tough dad that's the protector, but why can't I also be the dad that's emotionally supportive and there for you when shit's hard, right? Absolutely. When you're struggling, when you're stressed, you know what I mean? We can be all of those things.
Yep. 100%. And we should be, to the best of our ability.
Yeah. And another point that, you know, that I wanted to make was, you know, I talk a lot of shit about my uncle and all that stuff, but dude, I'm also, what's really, really cool about healing is gratitude, right? I'm grateful that he treated me like shit. I am grateful that he did all the things that he did simply for the fact that it taught me how not to be.
Absolutely. And gratitude is huge. I think we often overlook it. I had a couple weeks back, I interviewed Bob Greenaway, who's a retired police officer. And one of the things that he talks about is we both journal. And one of the things that we both do with the journaling is we write down some things we're grateful for. We journal about gratitude. And he says that he regularly expresses gratitude in his journaling for the traumas that he's experienced and the PTSD and the hard things. And it's much like you just said, because you learned so much from that. You grew so much from that. And, you know, if I'd had that conversation with Bob like 5-6 years ago, I would have just been like, man, you're so full of shit. Like, don't even
right.
But I wasn't in a space that I understood that. Like I was in a much darker space. And now I'm like, no, I absolutely get it. Like those traumatic events, and it may be hard for some people to see this right now in the space that they're in, but those traumatic events at the time seemed like they were insurpassable. Like there was no way through them, over them, around them. Like I was just stuck.
Right.
I couldn't see the light through the darkness. Once I started going through the process of healing, I realized that those experiences refined me. They made me stronger. They made me a better person. They actually taught me to help people more than I thought I ever could. I mean, I always thought helping people to me was, I'm a firefighter. Like, I'm going to go in the burning building and
Right.
destroy their house with water damage and put out the fire. And they're going to bring me cookies at the station the next day, which, by the way, never would happen for cops. Just saying.
Not even donuts, bro.
I know, right? Let's get the officers some donuts, everybody. Or
No, they just
something.
fucking defund us, bro. It's
Yeah,
fine.
right. But yeah, those things strengthen us, and to just be on the other side of that and see that, it excites me. Especially when people tell me that, like, hey, I started getting treatment, I started going to therapy, and you can see these little changes in them. You're like, yeah, come on, man, fan that fire, because it is such an empowering experience once you decide to accept it.
It truly is, man. And honestly, I'll tell you this: we don't choose our traumas, but we get to choose what to do with it.
Yes,
we get to choose what we're gonna fucking do with those traumas, right?
absolutely.
We can sit and be a victim and blame ourselves and blame others and yada yada yada, right? Or we can fucking turn it into something. Now, I don't fault or judge anybody that, after experiencing trauma, obviously is in that victim mindset, right? And poor me or blaming and all those things, because we've all been there.
Absolutely.
Right. But it's once we get through the fog, right? Once we start our healing journey or in our healing journey, that we can look back and be like, fuck, dude, I am so glad that fucking happened because of this, this, and this. It led me to all of these other things that has made me a better man.
Absolutely. It's so good. So good. So, let's see. We just unpacked a lot.
Holy
there.
shit, dude. Good stuff.
Yeah, it is way good stuff. So, how did all this translate into you becoming an officer? You got into law enforcement, you did some time in corrections, then became a patrol officer. Let's kind of dive into that and see. Let's hear about all that.
You know, kind of like I said before, being a cop was always my dream as a kid. You know, I mean, most kids say that, right? Cop, astronaut, firefighter, all those things. And, you know, like I said, I started late in life. I didn't get started until I was, 25. And it's funny because what jump started me, because I was just kind of bouncing around from job to job before I decided to go into law enforcement. But, my daughter's mom, her and I are no longer together. But at the time when we were together, we found out we were having a baby. And again, I was just bouncing around from job to job, chasing a paycheck, and I wasn't going anywhere. And so then, I had some family members that, came to me and were like, you thought about getting into law enforcement? It's something we feel like you'd be really, really good at, and then I'm like, yeah, it was something I wanted to do as a kid. I just don't know, all these limiting beliefs. Right. Long story short, I jumped in. I actually self-sponsored through a private police academy. And then so I paid my way through it. I had to get some grants and some funding to get through that. And then what's funny is the first day of the police academy. So actually, sorry, the day before I was supposed to start. So on a Sunday, my daughter was on the way. So my ex's water broke on Sunday and I was supposed to start the academy on Monday. Fucking crazy. I'm like, what am I going to do? Right. So my daughter was born on that Sunday. Greatest day of my life, without question. And I slept on the hospital couch. Had to be at the academy at 7 a.m. Probably got like an hour and a half of hospital sleep.
Yeah, which is really only like 15 minutes for as many
exactly.
times as they come in the room.
And roll to the academy and everything. And luckily, the director knew and they told the story and everything. And so I'm like, hey, I apologize if I'm falling asleep, but I'm going to do my best. And they all understood and it was super cool. But so I go through that academy. And then at the time, it was really competitive to get in law enforcement. There was a lot of people applying. Now you got to freaking give people $10,000 signing bonuses and they still won't do it.
Yeah.
So it was really competitive. I wanted to be a police officer and I couldn't get hired anywhere. I'd go to these testings. There was 300-400 people that were testing, super competitive. So I ended up getting an opportunity to start at the jail as a corrections officer. I got hired there. I was like, I got to take the first job I can because my daughter's on the way and, got to take care of her. So I get hired at the jail with every intention of staying there for, a year, getting my feet wet and then going to a police department. And well, ended up just sticking around for 4 years and working in corrections, dealing with inmates and getting into fights and dealing with mentally ill people every day and all the craziness and the incidents there and the trauma and everything. And I wouldn't trade the experience for anything, but my God, you couldn't pay me enough to go work back there again.
And I gotta hand it to anybody who's done corrections. When I was getting into fire, a friend of mine, her uncle was like, I don't know what his position was, but he was pretty much running the county jail. And he was like, any of her friends, he was like, come work for me, come work for me. And it just, I never wanted to do it. And like, there's an opportunity there to make some money and that they'll tell you promotions and move up and all that. But I never wanted to go to jail for work.
Right.
And as I kind of got older, I had opportunities to go and tour the jail and had friends that worked there. And even being on the law abiding side, when that door closes behind you, and it's the guy in Central that has control of the switch to whether or not you can get out, that feeling fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And you can't pay me enough.
No, and
I really hand it to people who day in and day out.
It takes a special person, and I did it for 4 years, and it was tough, man. Like there's obviously you see a lot of crazy shit in there, and you get to a point. It's interesting. You legitimately get to a point where you feel like you're incarcerated too. I mean, yeah, you get to go home, but you're there. And at the jail that I worked at, we were direct supervision, so you're in the housing unit for your entire shift with 64 inmates, right? Most people like, how did you not die? You know what I mean?
Probably had the blue line in the tile that they weren't allowed to cross.
Yeah. And you learn to build rapport with the inmates and everything. And granted, you're still going to have incidents, I mean, dude, I had a dude try and punch me in the face when I was trying to release him from jail. Like I was literally sending him out the door and he wanted to get stupid and he tried to swing on me. Well, needless to say, he stayed in jail.
Yeah, he just didn't want to go.
So it's just, a lot of crazy shit, a lot of trauma. So fast forward a little bit. So I did that for a little bit. And then 2016 is when I left the jail, but I had every intention of being done with law enforcement. I was like, I've had enough. I don't want to go to the streets. I don't want to do patrol. I've experienced enough trauma and bullshit. I'm done. Right. Well, I took a break and I was, working for the airlines, doing some part-time work, throwing bags, getting flight benefits. And that was fun. But ultimately, like, it wasn't enough to support my daughter, and do all these things. So a friend of mine convinced me to, apply to work for a police department. And I applied, got hired. And here I am 4 years later, working for a police department. I've been on patrol. So that's kind of how that all transpired, in a short way of telling it.
Yeah. And it's kind of we do some crazy stuff and get involved in crazy things for what was the childhood dream, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what it was for me. Like, I don't know that mine always resonated with me as a child. I had an experience as a young teenager that kind of thrust me into the fire service. But yeah, like at first it's great. You love it. And then you kind of get that burnout phase. You get to that point where you're like, I'm not sure if that's, and I could absolutely see that with the corrections and the thing. Like,
well, and I was,
anybody could do it.
Right. After I hit my 4 years, when I quit the jail, like I expressed, like I hit that burnout phase. I was done with law enforcement. 2016 was the time when Ferguson had happened, things over there. And so I was just like, I'm done. And so I took, I was away from it for a year and a half, I guess, and then once my friend convinced me to do it, and I was like, here's what my friend told me. They're like, this was your fucking childhood dream. You know what I mean? do you want to live the rest of your life wondering what if? I'm like, all right, you convinced me. Right. So, so I did it. And when I started, when I started with the police department, dude, I was ecstatic. I was fired up. I was thrilled. It was fun and I was enjoying it. It was right around, cause I got hired on in January of 2019, and then, fast forward to, the summer, almost fall of 2020. And around that time, after the riots, which were in May of 2020, I was burnt the fuck out. All of us, right? All of us were, after everything that we all went through over the summer, and then it was in September where I had my traumatic event that changed the course of my entire fucking life going forward.
Yeah. And so, is that something you want to talk about with the traumatic event? I think you've already shared this with me. Excuse me. Got my tongue.
I might have briefly. So just, and I'll try and, shorten it as much as I can. So essentially, I had just gotten on shift. I was working the graveyard shift. This was September of 2020, August, September, I think, somewhere in there. I had gotten dispatched to a call of on the west side of the city that I work in, a vehicle that was in the Jordan River. Right now, in this particular area where this vehicle was in the river is an area that's known for tweakers and stolen vehicles being dumped. Right. So like stolen vehicles will get dumped there in the river and different things like that. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's just a stolen vehicle that they dumped in the river. Right. That was the only information I had. So I'm just bebopping over there, just, taking my time, driving over there. Just a couple seconds later, I heard another officer get on the radio. And you have to click on an additional button in order to pull up additional call notes, which I typically will pull up while I'm driving to the call. Right. I hadn't pulled this up yet. He had pulled it up. He gets on the radio and he says, "Dispatch, just confirming there's a 2-year-old trapped in the vehicle." Dispatch confirmed it, and that changed everything. Changed my response completely. So I'm going lights and sirens, and I'm freaking the fuck out because I'm like, I don't have swim training. I don't have swift water rescue training. Like, what am I gonna do? And the whole fucking time, Dan, driving lights and sirens, and I was closer than anybody else. The whole time there, I'm driving. I'm like, God, please fucking let the fire department be there before me. Let the fire department be there before me. They have training for this shit, right? They know what to do. I don't. But I'm really grateful that I had watched a YouTube video a couple days prior to this randomly. It's like God was preparing me for this.
Absolutely, that happens.
I had watched a YouTube video of another cop responding to a similar thing of somebody drowning in the water and what he did and how he responded. So anyways, I get there. Sure as shit, as I'm pulling up, no fire engines. I'm like, God damn it, they're usually here before me. So so I'm thinking, well, it's time. I'm getting waved down by people on the banks of the river. And I'm like, all right, guess we're doing this. And I let dispatch know because I was going to shed my gear. I just let dispatch know, said, hey, I'm going in the water. Bye. I take off my vest. I take off my duty belt because I don't need that shit holding me down. And here I've got transients on the banks of the river watching this shit. And I'm leaving my gun belt on the banks of the river. Yeah. Am I going to come out of the river alive? I don't know. Crazy shit. So I'm like, all right, we're going in. And the mom, who was the driver of the vehicle, she was drunk. She sped and crashed into the river. Her 2-year-old was still trapped in there. She's standing on the banks of the river screaming at me to go and save her baby. She's screaming, like just out of control, So I jump in and I'm going in the water. I'm trying to find an opening. The car is, it's submerged this way, the tail end sticking out. It's not sinking. It's still just kind of there. And I'm diving into the water. It's dark. It's 11 o'clock at night, right? It's the Jordan River. It's disgusting. It's dirty, right? You can't see shit. No, there is not a flashlight or lantern or high beams on this planet that'll let you see into that river. Promise you. So anyways, I'm diving in. I'm trying to, find an opening in the car so I can get in there. Nothing. I can't find it. Eventually I find the window that's still cracked. And this is the front of the car and she's in the back. But I find the opening of the window. The problem is that every single time I finally get under there and I find it, I have to come back up for air. Mm. So I'm like, this isn't doing me any good. And I probably did it 100 times, maybe not 100. But it felt like
it. I'm sure
it felt like it as I'm hearing other officers responding. And dude, one of the coolest things about this entire incident is seeing officer after officer after officer taking off their gear and jumping in that fucking water with me, trying to help and save this girl. It was it's tough. I need to talk about this stuff, but it's hard. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get her. Mm. I couldn't find her, and I was taking turns with other officers going in and coming out and all this and nothing while we're waiting for fire to get their stuff together so they can go in and get actually under the car with their swift water rescue gear and everything. And what felt like an eternity, they eventually, they got a firefighter in there and he was able to pull the girl out. But while he was underneath, like we've got a rope attached from the vehicle to the fire engine, keeping that afloat while he's under there. And he, it felt like he was under there forever. And eventually, once he comes out, I'll never forget. I just remember him holding this 2-year-old, and she was lifeless. She wasn't moving, and they assembly lined her to the shore, got her in the ambulance and got her the fuck out of there. I understand that they got a pulse at one point. They got her back, but she ended up she was going to be a vegetable. And they eventually ended up pulling the plug. She didn't make it. All I could see as she was being assembly lined across there, I just thought of my daughter, and that fucked me up big time, so, that was, it was a really, really fucking shitty night.
Yep. I've been there. And those are the hardest. Kids are the worst calls to go on. End of story. Especially once you have kids, they're just the worst. And even the most valiant efforts, unfortunately, in our line of work don't always pay off.
Right.
Which is hard. It's hard to live with that sometimes, or at least we think that it is. And it takes time to work through it and process it.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Part of it is I blamed myself, right? That's what we do.
Yep.
Right? And this was a part, and this ties into my healing, right? Is a part of me blame myself that, because at the time I wasn't in great shape, you know what I mean? I wasn't working out, I wasn't taking care of my body. So I blame myself. Fuck, dude, if you would have been in better shape, if you would have been more fit, if you would have been taking care of your body, maybe you could have held your breath longer. Maybe you could have swam better, and maybe you could have fucking saved her. You could have been in there sooner, right? So I blame myself for all of that, right? And that's not okay, but that's what we do.
It is what we do.
It absolutely is what we do. Dude, I thought of every single thing under the sun as to why it was my fault that she didn't make it. And it wasn't until later on, through therapy and through all these things that we're going to talk about, that I realized I wasn't the drunk driver. My therapist helped me realize you weren't driving that car. You weren't the one that made that decision. to drink and drive with your child in the car.
Mm.
Right. And it was when I, realized that I, started to kind of give myself a little bit of a break, and so really, like, if we want to jump into, the healing aspect, because that was the traumatic incident and that fucked me up.
Absolutely. And it does. Like I said, children are the worst. Especially with children. I've experienced a very similar situation within the last few years, but several over my career with drownings. And it's an unfortunate thing. There is just no good outcome, and it's hard. And we do blame ourselves, but we shouldn't blame ourselves.
Right.
But it's something that we do, and it's something that we have to learn not to, and find those reasons why. Like you said, you didn't drive the car into the river. You weren't driving drunk with the child in the back. And so it is important to recognize that for anybody who's struggling with that we didn't cause these events. We were put in a position by choice and by maybe divine intervention to deal with the situation because of somebody else's decisions, or for whatever circumstance it was. And there is some comfort in that if we can recognize that we didn't cause it. We were just there to try to help and do the best we could. So Nick, not Nick, Darren, what did you
people call me D Nick. Yeah. It's fine, whatever.
What did this healing process look like for you? How did this go next?
So what's really awesome is, and I'm sure you're probably familiar, have heard of this before, but my department has a program called peer support. And, our peer support is there for those that are watching that don't know, peer support is a group of your peers that have some training in mental health and trauma and things like that will show up for you. When you go through traumatic events, when you're struggling, whether it's a traumatic event where you're dealing with struggles in your marriage, or work is just becoming too much for you, whatever it is you're dealing with, and peer support shows up, and they're just there for you, and us as cops, right? We don't like to talk about our feelings, right? So it's a little
firefighters.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier when it's another cop, right? Mm-hmm. So another cop comes to you and is there for you. It's a little bit easier to talk about shit. Is it still hard? Sure. But it's easier rather than some fucking stranger that doesn't know how to be a cop or doesn't know anything about law enforcement, right? That can't relate, right? But when I have a veteran officer that I trust and respect, and to this day is one of my very best friends, show up on the shore of the river that night. He wasn't even in that incident, but he heard it come out. He was working a completely different shift on another side of town, and he showed up. He came over and he put his arm around me. He says, "I'm here for you," and he was there. And I didn't realize this at the time, but he was our peer support coordinator. He was like one of the main guys. And he showed up and he was there for me. And he just helped me with everything that I needed, and then, after the incident, I'm driving home and I get a call from another peer support member that reached out to me. Right. And none of these guys were like, "Hey, tell me what happened." You know what I mean? It was just them being supportive, being there, listening to me if I wanted to talk, and then the very next morning, I woke up and had a knock at my door, and it was a different peer support member. These are all cops. And he showed up at my door, never met the guy in my life. And he's been a cop for 15 years. And now he also is one of my very best and closest friends. Showed up at my door and was there, talked to me about, want to hit a shooting or something traumatic that he had been in a different agency that he was in. And, and just showing up for me, man. Like, it was fucking huge having all these people just show up for me and giving a shit, like caring. Right. Because you feel so alone. Right. I was blaming myself. I thought I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough because I couldn't save her. Right. And so by having these people show up and just being there for me was the number one thing that started my process, and then they they referred me to a therapist that I'd never met, but she was one that our peer support highly, highly recommended, and she'd worked corrections for like 20 years, and now she has her own practice, and it's called A Warrior's Light. You know what I mean? And so she does therapy strictly for law enforcement, military, firefighters, first responders, so I went and saw her, and she was a fucking game changer. Like, we did, for those of you that don't know, we did EMDR treatment, which was super helpful and effective, but we made goals, right? We talked about all of the traumas, and we made some goals. She got to the root of my problem as to why I was blaming myself for this happening. And we came to find out the main thing that I kept centering on was that I wasn't fit enough, right? That I wasn't strong enough, that I wasn't good enough to save the child. So she asked me, what are some things that I've wanted to do, but that I just don't do? And I told her straight up, like, I wish I could find time to go to the gym more. Wish I could, just go to the gym more, but I just don't, right? So we made a goal. It wasn't something astronomical. We made a goal of me going back to the gym, and in my mind, I didn't think that it was going to be a lifelong thing anymore. I was, I'd always been so inconsistent with it. Going to the gym. I'd go for a period of time, love it, and then I'd fall off, right? But this time, through treatment, therapy, I wanted it to become a lifestyle for me. And my motivation was, if I run into this incident again or a similar incident, I'm not going to have the same fucking excuse, right? Like, I'm going to be ready, right? That's my whole thing, is I'm going to be ready for anything now, and that started my fitness journey. And again, this was September of 2022. Dude, I haven't stopped since then.
Great.
It has been a consistent part of my life. It is a lifestyle now. Like, it's not even because it used to be, it was like a thing I had to do. I know I have to go to the gym so I can be healthy, right? And a lot of times it felt like a burden, or it was like, fuck, I don't want to go to the gym. But now it's like, if I don't go to the gym, I'm fucking pissed. Like, I'm not happy. Everything else is like in disarray if I don't consistently go. Right? It fucks with my mental health now, and I can't have that. Right. And so making that goal for that one thing alone changed everything, because the second that I started changing my health habits, my health and fitness habits, and being disciplined with that, then I was able to get disciplined on other things in my life. Right. But kind of to go back a little bit, one of the things that, I know that is a struggle for a lot of people, and it was something that I struggled with too after this. Like, I was drinking more, right? And to be perfectly honest with you, Dan, like, I told people all the time, I was like, I was drinking, and this is part of the reason, like, I was drinking because I couldn't sleep anymore after this incident. I literally was having the night terrors, the bad dreams, and I couldn't sleep. So I was drinking more alcohol to fucking fall asleep, because sleeping pills, melatonin, that shit wasn't working.
No, might work for the first night a little bit, but
yeah. So my whiskey bill was going through the roof, and I was like,
I've been there.
I was like, I need to cut back this bill. This is costing me a lot, and I went a different route, and I'm not ashamed to say that I take prescribed sleeping pills that help me sleep, but I don't drink as much alcohol, right? Yeah. And not to mention, alcohol, it may have helped you fall asleep, doesn't help you stay asleep, and it just causes so much more problems. But ultimately, like, I was able to work through that, heal from that, because I was drinking a lot, but I also couldn't sleep, and that sucked.
Yeah,
having these depletes dreams. So, like I said, making that goal and just starting to get disciplined in the gym and making that a consistent thing, every day, changed everything in my life, everything, you know, and that may not be the same thing for everybody, but again, you know, I firmly believe that your body is everything. If your body is not functioning properly, if you don't take care of your body, everything else is shit.
Yep.
It's just going to fall apart. So for anybody that's out there that's struggling to figure out how to get their life on track, like if you're not taking care of your body, start there.
Yeah. And it's in the end, it's going to be whatever you need to do. And that was one of the things that like my therapist had really pushed too, was like, well, you know, because when we exercise, our body releases endorphins. Endorphins are, they feel good. They're good for us. I think we also release some serotonin and different things that make us happy. But sometimes when we're in like our lowest points, doing anything is active is the last thing we want to do.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not, you know, hey, you need to go just crush some big 2-hour workout, but maybe you just need to go walk around the block. Go outside, walk around the block, and just then the next day go do it again. And just keep doing that, whatever that is, just a little step. Because I know for me, like when I was that depleted, there was no way. Like I can remember one day hopping on the treadmill, and we had a treadmill in the house, and just going for a run, which I would do periodically, but I hadn't in months because I was just so down and depressed. And I went and started running, and like 5 minutes into the run, I was like crying my eyes out. Like it was just this release of, I mean, I'm sure there were some endorphins there, but it was not a normal release. And so it was just like I was pushing myself too much. So I had to step back and just like, okay, I got to do something little and then build on that little thing. It's just, it's just that do one step, the next day, take 2 steps and work your way up. And as you go, you'll find that, yeah, it is like an addiction. You replace bad things with good things little by little. And before you know it, your life has changed.
Oh, absolutely.
And
it's one bite at a time, man.
Absolutely. And
I mean?
It's an amazing, beautiful thing to see.
I didn't start like when I went back to day one of the gym after, you know, making this goal, you know, I didn't immediately go and start like you said, doing a killer 2-hour workout. Right. I started where I felt like I could, you know, tried not to do too much, you know, and again, you know, it's just, it's those baby steps, just a little bit each day and being disciplined, right? Because motivation's bullshit. Motivation fades, right? I just don't believe in motivation as far as it's not long lasting. No. You know, you have to do small things each and every day and become disciplined, right?
Yep.
2.5 years ago or whatever it was, what are we? Yeah. 2.5 years ago, when I started this journey, I wasn't bench pressing 300 pounds like I just did yesterday. You know what I mean? There's no way I could have done that. There's no way in my mind I thought that was even possible, right? There's no way that, you know, 2.5 years ago, I could have done a 4-minute plank, but I can now, right? So this stuff takes time, you know, and that's hard to comprehend when we're going through the shit, right? It's like you said, you jump on the treadmill for 5 minutes and you're like, fuck, dude, that was too much. This was hard. Fuck this. And you want to quit. Right. But if you want to heal, if you want things to be better, you're just going to have to embrace the suck every now and then.
Yep, you are. And to recognize that there is some of it that you can change easier than others. And some of it is going to suck for a while.
Yeah.
But the stuff that sucks for a while, the longer versions of suck are the ones where the most growth and strength come from.
I agree. And continuing, and again, like not only the gym, but like continuing to go to therapy, right? Doing different treatments, being open-minded, right? That's hard for us as in my line of work too, is, oh, this is just a bunch of hippy dippy bullshit, right? Yeah. You know, but dude, going through EMDR, I've also done another advanced therapy that's called ART. That is a game changer. It's incredible for healing. So again, you know, staying consistent with that, and then, you know, showing up for yourself, and trying to focus on the things that you enjoy, that you love,
Absolutely.
are huge parts to healing, right? I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed with everything that we have going on in life, right? There's so much responsibility, so many things, but if we can just take it back to, to the things that we enjoy doing, and trying to do that, that helps a lot. And again, and on top of that, doing some hard things,
Yep.
Healing isn't easy, right? Trauma isn't easy. It's gonna suck. It does suck. I'm still healing, right? But it's a journey. Like, I don't feel like there is a finish line in life.
No, it's always a progression. And I think it's important too, because there's times where even I get stuck in that, where I don't feel like I'm getting through the hard stuff. But periodically you need to take a look back behind you and see how far you've come.
Dude,
and
it's
really
huge.
take account of it. And it is huge. And it doesn't seem like it, because you just trudge along for so many days and months and weeks and years, and just before you know it, you're like, well, I haven't gone anywhere. But then you start to look back at like all the things that you've changed and accomplished, and that it becomes monumental. And that gives me drive to keep going and work on other things that I'm not healed from and that aren't right yet. And it gives me drive to help other people to seek out opportunities to heal and treatments, and to give them hope that healing is possible.
Absolutely. I look at, again, my progression, right? I look back to 2.5 years ago, and, I was, at the time I was probably weighing, like, for me, I was weighing like 215 pounds, and now I'm down to 190, and it's a weight that I've stayed at for a while, that I'm comfortable with. All of my goals that I wanted to accomplish in the gym, I'm achieving, that are a lot higher than I thought I would, 2.5 years ago. And it's really, really cool to just look back and see, like, holy fuck, I did do hard things. I did overcome this stuff. Are there days where it's still hard? Dude, there's plenty of times where, like, I hear certain calls come out on the radio that could potentially be similar, or I hear the Jordan River, and it triggers, right? You get those triggers and you think back to that stuff. But I'm at a place now that, even though it may trigger a bit, I'm at a place now where, like, I know how to handle it. I know how to handle it better. I know how to cope.
Yep.
I've learned those coping mechanisms. I've strengthened myself, right? But it wasn't always that way. It takes time. And so for anybody out there that's struggling, man, anybody that's, whether they're dealing with alcohol addiction, with their traumas, whatever it is, like, it can be overcome. But in that moment when you're dealing with it, it's impossible, right? That's what we think. We're like, fuck, dude, there's literally no way that I'm gonna get through this. Everything's shit. My life is shit. My life is shit, right? Everything's bad. Everything sucks and I'm dying, right? Yeah. That's where our mind goes.
Absolutely. It does 100%.
But knowing that there are other people out there that have been through the shit, overcame the shit, right? That helps, right? Like I said, having those peer support members show up for me, having my therapist show up for me, and doing all those things, that helped me so much. And that got me to joining my peer support team. So now I'm a member of peer support.
That's great.
And I show up for other guys that go through shit.
That's
and
great.
I love it.
Yeah.
Right. But when I was in that dark place on the banks of the river, super fucking shitty night, dark, and I was just like, there's no way I could have imagined that I would be where I'm at right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that is such a great message to anybody who's watching or listening that's struggling, that we all have those moments where it seems like there's nothing we can do to get past this. And that's why I have people like Darren on here and the other people, because we all have those stories. We all share it's a different story, but it's the same feeling. And, if I just hope that if this message resonates with somebody, that you know that there is a way out of this, that's a positive way, and a way to heal and grow and strengthen and to overcome these things. And I truly believe come out stronger on the other side, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and just a healthy, happy human.
Absolutely, dude. I would implore anybody out there listening, if you are fucking struggling with anything, whatever the fuck it is, reach the fuck out. It's okay. Like,
Absolutely.
it's okay. There is no shame in it. There is nothing wrong with reaching out because you're fucked up. It's okay. We're all fucked up. We've all been fucked up,
Yep.
right? It's okay to fucking struggle. It's okay to not know how you're going to make it to tomorrow, right? But you got to reach out.
Absolutely.
Because I know deep down, everybody wants a hand. Everybody wants help that's struggling. And they're afraid that they're going to either, you know, be a burden. They're going to, you know, be bothering somebody, or, you know, they're going to feel the guilt and the shame, you know, or they're afraid of how people will look at them now. Right. I can't speak for you, but I have, in my life, I've had suicidal thoughts.
Absolutely.
Right.
I've been there.
And there's very few darker places than that. Right. When you feel like you are so low and you are so down that the only solution is to take your own life, and that you just want to be done. Right. And do you think anybody wants to tell anybody about that? Like, that's not easy. That is not easy to admit that shit. Like me saying this right now on a podcast to other people, to the viewers, everybody's watching, like, that's some vulnerable shit. And that wasn't easy for me to say.
It's not. And I 100% stand by you for saying it. Appreciate it, because I've been there and so many other people have been there. And it's important to know that we're not alone in those thoughts, but it's more important to know that we can't act on those thoughts. We need to seek out the help. And, you know, Darren's a great resource to reach out to. I'm a great resource to reach out to. Anybody who I've interviewed and had on this channel, on the podcast, reach out to them. They're all available, and they've all committed themselves to being available to help other people.
I tell people all the time, Dan, I say it, and I'll say it again. I go, I don't give a fuck if I am dead asleep, right? Mm-hmm. Fucking call me, text me, send me a message. Like, you will not be judged for feeling like you can't go on anymore, because we've been there.
Yep.
You will not be treated any different. You're going to get help. Because I think about my life, and I think about all the shit that I've been through, and I think about what if no one would have showed up for me? What if I would have acted on those thoughts? Now I wouldn't be in a position to be on this podcast with you, sharing my message, helping other people, showing up for other people in my job and the other ventures that I'm looking to get started on. You know what I mean? Yeah. And being able to help others. Like, all it takes is just making a difference for one person.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. And anybody out there, you're not alone. So Darren, you want to touch real quick on some of the things that you are working on?
Yeah. So, it's kind of still in the beginning phases. Something that I've been really passionate about for the last little bit. Is, we sit here and we talk about PTSD, we talk about trauma, we talk about shit. Well, I mentioned that I'm a single dad. I've got my daughter, and I've been single off and on for quite a few years. I've dated here and there, had some serious relationships and whatnot. But overall, like, I've gotten pretty good at being single and doing shit on my own, and handling business. Well, something that, I eventually want to get started is I'd like to start a group for divorced and single dads, something that, to support, to coach, to help. Right. Because I look back, and when you when you are in a relationship, you have kids, whether you're married or you're not, and then, you split up. There's a lot of men out there, and it just is what it is. I'm just going to say it, that don't know how to fucking be dads on their own, and it's no disrespect. It's just, they've been so used to working their job, and the wife taking care of the things. It's not always the case. I get that. But there's a lot of guys that once it's now you've got to do laundry. You've got to do dishes. And maybe you did that stuff before, but I guarantee you there's things that you didn't do before. Laundry, dishes, taking your kids clothes shopping, making sure that
yeah.
That's a tough one.
That was a big one for me, was clothes shopping, because my ex handled all that.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, girls, just pick out some stuff and just try it on. Shit, I don't know what size you wear. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Wasn't my thing. It's now
crazy. It's crazy, and so all of those different things that maybe some men aren't accustomed to handling, on top of keeping a house in order, on top of keeping it clean, and working and all these things. I can't tell you how many times I hear stories of men just giving up, quitting on their kids because it's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too much. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it, and that's sad, as a father who takes great pride in raising his daughter and doing the very best that he can. And, I've got a home, I've got a 4-bedroom home I've got to keep up, and a dog that likes to play in the mud and bring it to my fucking house. And, all the things, working a full-time job, starting businesses, everything. It's a lot, but it can be done with support, right?
Absolutely.
It's huge if we have that support of other dudes being like, hey, bro, I've been there. I know how to do these things. I know how to juggle this, let me help you. Or, you know what I mean? Like, just being able to impart that experience and that wisdom on others. Because, dude, I look back to when I first split up with my ex, and this is a big reason why I want to do this stuff. It's because when my daughter's mom and I split up, I'm like looking around and I'm like, the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to do this. This is scary. Like, I don't know how to do all of these things. I'm granted, my daughter she was 4 at the time, but still was a lot of unknowns. There was still a lot of things, like, I got to get her clothes, I got to get food, I got to do all these things that I wasn't accustomed to doing before. And it's hard, but also along with that, not just the things around the house and all that, but also emotionally, when that's the biggest thing is, when I split up with my daughter's mom, I remember driving to work, and I had that realization. It kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, fuck, I'm no longer going to see my daughter every single day for the rest of my life, because we're going to be split. Right. I still get to see her. But in that moment, I'm like, it's the end of the fucking world. That's the worst thing ever. Right. Yep. I thought it was game over. I was like, this fucking sucks. And so by having that support from other men that have been there, done that, and that can get through it, because the emotional damage of a divorce, and splitting up and thinking, like, you have all these thoughts of, like, I thought, like, I'm a failure as a father. Like, I couldn't keep our fucking family together. Right. You feel all of those things, you experience that. And then shit can spiral, you lose the desire to show up for your kids because it's just all too much. And it shouldn't be that way. Just because you split up with your ex, just because you got divorced, that doesn't make you a terrible human being, doesn't make you a terrible parent. Your kids deserve 2 happy parents. And if that means they're happiest apart, then so be it. That's the way it's.
And I think too, like, the support and helping with that, it's so much of the mental, and just learning how to be the single parent. Cause I personally feel like I have a better relationship with my children now than I ever have.
Sure.
And that was part of just learning that process to do things on my own, but working with my ex as much as possible, and just putting myself out there to be available to my kids, and to actually take the time that, well, I only have them half the time. I got to make the most of it. So spend time with them.
Right.
I mean, that's all they want. And that's great stuff. And I think
Well, I think too that what's really difficult too is what so many guys get wrapped up in is, especially when we're talking about custody stuff, right? That's when it gets gnarly. Like if we're not on the same page as our ex, then we're dealing with the custody stuff and then we're fighting all the time. And that affects your kids. That affects your ability to be a good parent because you're just constantly fighting over who gets who and how it's all going to facilitate. And so like, I want to be a conduit. I want to be able to be there for other men and show up and say, look, it was rocky in the beginning for my daughter's mom and I. Like it was tough. Like we had some roller coaster stuff with the custody, but we worked through it. We eventually worked through it. And now I'm happy to say my ex and I get along fucking fantastic. We communicate well. We do everything that's in the best interest of my daughter. My ex remarried and her husband now is a fucking stud. I love the guy. I can literally go over there and talk with all of them. We can all talk together and communicate, have a good time, and it's great. But it wasn't always that way. Yep. And that's the thing that I want to impart on other men is, look, it may fucking suck in the beginning, but you can get to this point.
Yep, absolutely. That's great stuff. So Darren, if people want to talk to you more about like your healing journey and what you're working on, how can people get a hold of you? How can people find you?
Well, I'm on Instagram. I think everybody these days is on Instagram. It's the popular place to be.
Yeah.
So feel free to, anybody wants to hit me up, send me a message. I'm more than happy to, and then you chat. And if we chat even further, I'll give you my number. We can go that route. But you can find me on Instagram. I don't know if by just searching my first and last name will work, but my Instagram handle is D Nichols. That's DNICHOLS 0422.
And I'll put that in the show notes as well, so you guys can find him.
Yeah.
So just final thought. I know I think we already covered it, but just if you were going to say one thing to somebody who's wondering if they should get help, what would it be?
Reach out now.
Yeah.
Reach out. You have my Instagram handle, so you have zero excuse now. Reach out to me, reach out to Dan, reach out to somebody you trust, somebody you care about if you're struggling with anything, because I guarantee you somebody that you can reach out to is going through something similar or has gone through something similar that you are.
Yep. You're not alone.
You're not alone. So reach out now.
Perfect. Love it. Thanks again for coming on, Darren. I really appreciate it. And hey, everybody, we'll catch y'all next week for another episode of Freeing Your Mind podcast. Have a great one.
Awesome.
Love y'all.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.